Okay, Kristen, whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mariel. Hi, everybody. My name is Kristen Cooper. I'm a member of the STS Information Literacy Committee, and welcome to our February chat. Today we'll be hearing from Nacheli Marcano, Eliza Gallagher, and Anne Grant from Clemson University, and they'll be talking to us about integrating ACRL from the ACRL framework into STEM graduate courses. So thank you for joining us, and Nacheli, turn it over to you.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Hold on one quick second. Okay. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
And so reflecting on the framework, discussing the implications of this approach to information literacy, testing the integration of the frames has really taken a collaboration among the three of us. And so the purpose for today is to address some of the challenges that we have faced as science and technology librarians, some of the strategies that we have applied to reach out to grad students and faculty, ways to integrate the framework into our STEM courses. In particular, we're going to focus on the frame authority is constructed and contextual. Also, we'd like to exchange some ideas for how to collaboratively redesign instruction sessions, assignments, and courses, and, if time permits, ways to engage in pedagogical research that would involve faculty members in the discipline areas. As far as the challenges, as many of our scholars, including Dempsey and Malpas, have well stated, the adoption of new technologies, the creation of local databases, the formation of new collaborative environments, and of course the evolving nature of the scholarly record, in particular the specialized nature of scientific research and their scholarship, are calling upon us librarians to leave the physical library space and to form part of the research life cycle. This cohabitation will allow us as professionals to understand the different research workflows that are taking place. We will be able to curate some of their researcher profiles and, of course, be active participants of diverse interactions. As far as educational and professional background in the sciences, we still struggle with some of that. Even though there are more technology majors joining our field of librarianship, the rate in which librarians are retiring at this very moment, we just can't simply catch up, and we're still struggling with the recruitment of new science librarians. But in the meantime, for those of us who are practicing science librarianship at the moment, we need during this transitional period to find ways of providing service to these growing specialized disciplines. Let's see. We're going to pass it now to Anne, who will speak more about the transformation of our roles as librarians. Let me take you there.
Hello, my name is Anne, and so in thinking about how our roles are shifting as librarians, if you sort of look at this slide thinking about sort of print era and digital age and the ways that our jobs are sort of shifting, it can sort of help you think about ways to allocate or reallocate your time as we start to talk about ways that we face these step up to face these challenges of integrating ourselves into the research cycle on campus more deeply. So as far as thinking about shifting from collections to workflows, maybe taking some of our focus from traditional collection development into workflows and becoming part of researcher workflows, becoming less about products and more about curators of research profiles, helping people to deepen those research profiles and even understand them a little more deeply, shifting from artifacts to becoming part of research life cycles so that it's not just about finding the right materials, but how you use them, how you archive them, how you make data available, how you add metadata to projects, and then thinking about outcomes in ways of looking at interactions, venues for diverse interactions, making sure that we're making room in this digital age and in this sort of research shift to becoming more an integral part of the research that's happening on campus, so that it's not just about providing people with resources, but it's about being involved in the process ourselves as that research process. So I'm going to pass this back to Nashieli.
Thank you, Anne. And in addition to having to embrace this transformation and to have this shift of being in the physical building to being in the workflows, the diverse workflows, we have to take into consideration the context, because context is everything. And in the case of my subject area as a STEM librarian, if we look at the Clemson ecosystem with regards to the College of Engineering, Computing, and Applied Sciences, and also the College of Science, we, as part of the science team, there are 3 of us working in the subject areas. For example, in engineering, my colleague Jen Comfort, engineering librarian, and I, as STEM librarian, have divided our population by functions rather than by subjects. So she takes care of the faculty and students in the undergraduate programs, where I work with the students in the graduate programs. There are enough differences in the research needs between undergrads and grads that we felt it would be interesting to experiment with this model, and so far it has worked very well. Now, in the case of the College of Science, we did a more traditional distribution at work. My colleague Megan Sheffield works with the biological science students, and I take the other science disciplines, chemistry, genetics, biochemistry, math, physics, and astronomy. Overall, the 3 of us, the science team, we're taking care of about 1/3 of the total student population at Clemson. So yes, it is a lot of landscape and context to cover, and we need to find ways to enter these diverse communities. One community in particular that I have chosen to delve deeper is the Engineering and Science Education Department. And I would like us to take a look at this more localized landscape, and I will give it to my colleague Eliza Gallagher. 1 second.
Great. Thank you, Nashieli. So I want to help.
Hold on 1 second, Eliza. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, great. Okay, now I have the magic ball that lets me actually advance the slides. So our department is a fairly unusual one, and so I want to help contextualize what we're doing, what Nashieli and Anne have been doing with us in terms of the department itself. So it's a small department, and it's a PhD-only department. And so every circle that you see on this screen right now, every little circle represents an actual individual human being. The blue dots in the center, those are our 13 current PhD students, and we've got them grouped according to the research groups that they form in the department and then linked to their primary faculty advisor. The sort of purplish-reddish dots that are inside that ESED green bubble are the faculty members whose primary appointment is to ESED. So there are 8 of us who are primarily housed in engineering and science education, but every single one of us has at least one appointment outside of that department as well. So for example, I have joint appointments to mathematical sciences and also to education and human development. So I'm actually housed in 3 colleges. All of my colleagues have similar situations. The green boxes that you see, those are other departments that they are connected with. So we span the engineering disciplines, and we also have connections into the College of Science. The 2 pink boxes that you see, those are academic appointments, the Associate Dean of Undergraduate Studies and the Associate Dean of Engagement and General Education. But both of those faculty members came out of chemistry departments and joint appointments to engineering and science education before taking administrative appointments. In addition, we have affiliations in other institutions. So one of our faculty members is currently at the National Science Foundation as a program director, and another faculty member is currently the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Engineering Education. You see some reddish purplish dots outside of the green ESED circle. Those are faculty members who are primarily housed elsewhere, either departments on campus at Clemson or at other institutions, but they have either adjunct or joint appointments to our department as well. So the net effect of this is that we are pulling on disciplines spread across the sciences, mathematics, and engineering. So we have to integrate often conflicting disciplinary practices and research conventions from this wide range of fields. So shared construction of contextual authority is kind of our hallmark. We live that every day. But I probably wouldn't have had the words to put to that until I started working with Nashieli and Anne and becoming familiar with the ACRL frameworks. So that's the department. The sort of the ethos of the department is probably best captured in how we've structured our graduate program. So one of our expectations is that our graduate students come in already having completed a Master of Science in a STEM discipline. We do have occasional exceptions, but those students must then go ahead and complete that master's degree in a STEM discipline. So we are driven by students having and faculty members having a strong disciplinary expertise, and then moving into education research from there. So our graduate students in year one often come in having already published research, conducted disciplinary lit reviews, and written theses. And then we only require 5 specific courses of them, 3 semester unit courses and 2 1-semester unit courses. All of those courses are centered around developing an awareness of the main theories and methods that underlie discipline-based education research. Those students also start carrying out education research tasks within their research groups in the first year of the program. And that's often a challenge. It requires that they integrate their disciplinary expectations for research into a new paradigm. And so what constitutes valid research in, say, chemistry or mathematics or mechanical engineering is very different than what constitutes valid research in an education research context, even related to one of those disciplines. Now, how we critique scholarly articles and how we write scholarly articles and how we present our work, they're all different than how we would carry out those same tasks in our STEM discipline fields. So the first year of our program is centered around making that shift. The second year is centered around initiating independent research. And it is expected to be independent and not just an outgrowth of the work of the research group. The third and fourth years then are centered around completing, extending, and disseminating that independent research. So that captures what we believe is important about discipline-based education research, because that's how we train the students who go forward in our field. So just to give you one sense of what that means in the context of one single group, this is my research group. And so our work has really 5 big themes. One is instructional practice. So on this screen, you see these 5 overlapping ovals, and there are icons within those ovals, with the green ones indicating student-led research projects and the blue ones indicating the ones that I lead. And so within the context of instructional practice, 3 of our 6 projects focus on that to some extent. How do people teach within the discipline, primarily at the undergraduate level? A second theme is STEM persistence. So why do students persist in or leave STEM fields? And 4 of our 6 projects include that aspect. A third theme, the blue oval, is about teacher and professional identity. To what extent do people think of themselves as a teacher, as a mathematician, as a physicist, as a chemist, as an engineer? And 2 of our projects encompass some aspects of that. The fourth big theme is diversity and equity. 5 of our projects include significant aspects related to underrepresentation of marginalized populations in STEM fields. And then finally, we have STEM cognition. And within my group, that means more specifically that we're exploring how students think about mathematical content, about chemistry content, and about biology content, because we have disciplinary experts in all of those fields. And that means that if we were divided up according to the previous frame that Nashieli showed you, we would be split among 3 research librarians. And we're very fortunate that we have Nashieli and Ann who are unifying a lot of what's happening here. So to be clear, I'm a mathematician by discipline. I don't understand the nuances of the chemistry or biology cognition aspects. And these are all big themes that we're dealing with. And the body of the scholarly literature associated with each of those 5 themes is vast. And for one of our 5 themes, we don't share a common knowledge base. So being able to talk to each other, to share ideas, and to support the work of each group member requires that we have common practices and agreement on what constitutes valid discipline-based education research. So that's the context in which our interactions have played out with Nashieli and Ann and with the students. And with that, I'm now actually going to hand it back to Nashieli.
Thank you very much, Eliza. It looks from the illustrations that you have provided us in the description that the ESED program at Clemson is well equipped to foment librarian-ESED relationships. I see that your scholars within this discipline require from their scholars to engage with information in ways that will contribute to their scholarly conversations. And let's take an example of how we can take a frame such as the authority is constructed and contextual, if I get to it. How we can approach this community with this frame. Well, this is a frame that speaks of the reflection of expertise. It talks about how information is situational, depending on the need and context, and how knowledge is a social construction. So this is definitely about a community of people debating, discussing, agreeing, disagreeing, and coming up with a meaning that is discovered through consensus. And I think this frame is particularly interesting and important, not just for the students to attain these concepts, to attain these concepts, but also for the librarian. I think it's important that librarians and students have the same set of outcomes and achieve the same expertise to construct and contextualize authority. Now, I would like to pass it to Anne real quick because I want us to see how we can start constructing and contextualizing our own authority, because we are part of this ecosystem. We're part of this. We're trying to enter these communities. We have to also be in the process of constructing authority. But I think as librarians, we have already become authorities within our fields. How can we translate that into the new disciplines?
So one of the things that, as the instruction coordinator, I wanted to try to facilitate within our peer group of librarians was to figure out how to become involved in teaching in a thoughtful and sort of research-based way. And we started to think about getting involved in our disciplines and to think about getting involved in our disciplines in different ways. And Nashieli's been a real leader in that and working with Eliza, and has inspired me to go and meet with some of my history faculty in the same ways. But you have to get started doing that. So figuring out how to join the research workflow by attending student presentations or faculty presentations and doing follow-ups to make connections between what they're doing and what you do as librarians, to help them understand that we have deeper roles in the research process than they might have first thought, to get us out of that book box that people tend to want to put us in. And then from the inside out, we started to look at ways that we could work on our librarian as researcher profiles, to think about forming a library journal club where we could discuss ways that other librarians are getting involved in the research process and how we might see that happening here at Clemson. And we also started to present teacher forums where we would talk about ideas of librarians and research and in ways that we might be able to make happen here at Clemson. We also wanted to figure out how to participate in the research life cycle by teaming up with a scholar, as Nashieli did with Eliza, or I did with that history faculty member. Find common research interests, understand that librarians come at information literacy or information fluency in unique ways, and we come in ways that have rubrics attached to them. So we already have the AAC&U rubrics for information literacy. We have the framework where we can work with the faculty member to build unique rubrics when it comes to assessment and grading. And we also wanted to figure out how to become part of diverse interactions on campus. So not just in the classroom, but also how we can introduce information literacy at things like poster presentations. They often put out calls for judges for poster competitions or research fairs on campus, and our librarians have become increasingly involved in those so that we can, again, bring that profile, that research profile higher for librarians on campus. So I will send this back to Nashieli.
Yes, and to elaborate a bit more on Anne's points, this practice, this is going to take practice, no, to construct and contextualize what we do in this particular area. So small things like accessing the course syllabus or the online learning platform can give us a panoramic view, no, of the following, no, what set of concepts and constructs they're working with, and to get a general feel of their context, their authorities, and a little bit about their workflow. But once you have this key, you can start practicing in one-shot sessions. You could do a brown bag lunch session or conduct a workshop. During this one-time visit, you'll have access to some of these concepts that I've mentioned before, but they're going to be working. Oops, sorry. Let me get to the right slide. I apologize for that. So here's the key. On the left, you access the course syllabus, you access the online platform, you enter the community. On the first teardrop that you see there, that will be your one-shot session, for example. That will give you access to some of the concepts and constructs that they're working with. But if you are able to visit the classroom 2, 3, 4 times, as I was able to do in the research methods course, you're going to be able to engage with students as they discuss the concepts, the constructs, and the theories that help you interpret the relationships between the constructs, and of course the framework that will guide their research. Let's see, if for example, if we take a look at a sustained model, like auditing the class, I was able to audit the research methods class. That gave me the whole view of the workflow, the different stages of the workflow, and their process of learning and doing research within this discipline. I also was able to take a participatory role as a learner to discuss all these topics and debates. It's a good way to be interacting as often as you can throughout that workflow. Keep an open mind, be open to conflicting perspectives, and see how the students discuss these conflicting perspectives and how the students recognize the value of the diverse ideas out there. And of course, it's going to take frequent self-evaluation, not just for the student, but also for the librarian, as he or she goes back to the library community and share findings from this class. And to develop an even deeper understanding of this discipline, I was able to join forces with Eliza to work on a qualitative and some quantitative research projects that we're still interpreting at this point. Also was able to be invited to serve as a dissertation committee member. And in terms of the frame, authority is constructed and contextual. This to me means their way of accepting me as a member of their tribe. So I've been able to gain a deeper understanding of this discipline and the individuals behind it. Let's see what the next slide has. Speaking of measuring what we do, our impact, it's difficult oftentimes when you have one-shot sessions to measure the direct impact that we're having in our students' success. And so the way that I've been able to measure the impact has been by doing more than 2-3 visits in the classroom. The idea is to be able to develop a research question that is interesting, that is important, and that I will be able to work with for a long time. So make sure that you select something that's interesting to you. We're interested in information fluency, also self-efficacy and the confidence of students performing well and becoming information fluent. And so our question is, are students information fluent as they perceive themselves to be? If they are or if they're not, what are the different relationships between performing well a task and perceiving yourself as performing well? And so the number 2 section here shows the different visits that we were able to do and observed most of these interactions with my students. And you see in between these visits, these were the different sections where we captured data. We collected information that related to self-efficacy or performance. And so the more dots that we were able to put on the graph, the more we could measure our impact as the course progressed, always taking into consideration the ACRL frame. Now that was our approach to entering the community. And now we are at the stage of interpreting our data, and then we'll see what level we're going to take it to. Let's see. Get to the next part. just quickly, some tips that I have gathered and that have worked for me in the almost 2 years that I've been here. It's been a short time, and I'm back into this type of librarianship. It's been 10 years since I was a science librarian. The last time I was a science librarian, then I went into humanities, and now I'm back here. So there's a learning curve to it. Teaming up with the science team, receiving mentorship from them, key individuals such as facility manager who gives you alerts on the new reservations for events related to STEM. All these individuals you see here are allies, and they would give you the support that you need to be able to maneuver yourself within the larger landscape. They'll connect you with the right tools to use, and also the external component. Work with individuals who are working directly with students. Also work with, for example, professional development program coordinators, the graduate school. These are organizations that have created or established events that attract students, in order for them to network, to develop their researcher identities, to remain in the STEM fields, and to, of course, maximize their impact while at Clemson. If you get in touch, have conversations, meet and greets with these individuals, you will be able to make a nice network within that landscape. And we can talk more about that, but I would like to open the forum for the audience to either post questions or comments on some of your challenges as STEM librarians. If you have found an effective outreach strategy, share it. Have you started conversing about the framework? And what are your thoughts on the authority is constructed and contextual frame? Thank you. Let's see.
If you can't unmute your microphone yourself, if you raise your hand, I think that we can unmute it for you. Or if you'd like to type your comment into chat, you can make sure that you select for it to go to all participants, and then everybody will see it.
I don't think they can do that. I think that's something only we can do, but don't say that.
I had a quick question for you guys, actually, and this is Kristen again. When you talked about developing allies both in and externally to the library, I was wondering if you had any tips or suggestions for developing those allies, especially externally, because I know that, or at least in my experience, that can be kind of challenging sometimes. So if you could maybe talk about that process.
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Well, in terms of external allies, in the case of graduate student service managers or graduate administrators, they've been instrumental as they often serve as principal resources for faculty and grad students on matters related to STEM disciplines. So they work with students from the time of enrollment to program completion. They organize orientations, they participate in campus-wide outreach events to network, and just having coffee and lunch conversations with some of these individuals has led me to classroom visits, orientation sessions, and library tour requests. Also, the collaboration that I've had by having conversations with the graduate college Grad 360 programs, which is something that Anne has worked closely with. It's another way to be able for the STEM librarian to be able to participate in their workshop sessions for professional development. It has opened me a lot of doors from this kind of workshop, there's always one student or two who will spread the word, and somehow you'll hear from organizations like, I think one occasion I had the Black Graduate Student Organization contacted me after a student attended a previous workshop of mine. So I offered another session to this particular group. This led to another student spreading the word and being able to talk about what I can do for the students. And so I was invited to another program, the Call Me Doctor event. At this event, I was part of a panel session discussing the dissertation process and the research, the library research involved. So I felt like I was part of that community of scholars, thanks to spreading the word from these students. Another case, let me think. Oh, I also approached the Office of Global Engagement and International Student Services just to have a greet and meet when I first began this position. And that has led me to a interesting outreach programming. I have now been writing content for the International Student Services newsletter every month, and that's another way to promote the services for the STEM students.
And I'll speak to that as well as one of those external allies. What really got the ball rolling for me was that Nasheli sent out an email, and it was very engaging and non-threatening email offering, and just saying, I'm here, I'm here for your discipline, and these are some ways that I might be of service to you. And she, in that email, suggested introducing students to doing library searches, to doing lit reviews, to organizing their references, to using, to becoming aware of what tools the library had available. And so that was a really easy way for me to take my group over. We went over to the library as a group, and she did sort of an introductory session. And that way, all of my students knew her, I knew her, and that then led to some of these other interactions that we've had and that have grown over time. So just that introductory email with some ideas of, here's how I could help you, that were very appropriate, very contextual, and they spoke to a need that I had at that moment, was the hook for me.
And I would like to add on to that because of the collaboration that I've had with Eliza, I have been able to connect with other ESED faculty members, who have other joint appointments with chemistry, environmental science. So that ecosystem has been organic to me to approach, and it's just going to continue. But it's hard to tell sometimes what one conversation might lead to until you're invited to do another session or speak about the library services.
Now, Shelley, why don't you go back to that slide about the ESED ecosystem? I think it was slide 6. Right, so if you look at that, in that ring of red dots within ESED, I'm at the upper part of that left curve. So I'm the one that's connected to Math Sci and Education and Human Development. So that initial contact with me then led Nasheli to have direct contact with my 4 graduate students, and she's on the committee for one of those 4 now. And then through that, as she said, to those other dots in that circle, and then spreading out to the other green boxes, the other departments on campus. And it really has been a very organic process, and I think a very fruitful and productive one, and it started with that one interaction. And on the flip side, through Nasheli, I got to know Anne. Now, Anne and I were on a search committee together before this, but we didn't really have a direct connection in terms of research and information literacy and information fluency and projects like that. So it's actually been a two-way street in terms of those connections building out. I don't spend as much time as Nasheli does building those connections on the library side, but I know that I have an entry there if I need it, and that's been very nice to have.
And I'll respond. Thank you very much, Eliza. And I'll address the question that's come up in the chat, but I did want to build off of this conversation very quickly. Because I was able to go in and serve as part of this study by doing some peer observations of Nashieli's involvement in Eliza's class, it really inspired me to think about ways that I could get involved with my history faculty, and has led to another research study over in the history department that's very similar to the one that Nashieli and Eliza are carrying out. So sometimes it just takes watching one of your colleagues be successful with working with a faculty member to inspire you to go out and sort of step outside your box and find really awesome faculty like Eliza who are excited to work with librarians and find new ways to connect with students and think about information literacy. But going back to the question about, we have an outreach librarian who serves as an official liaison to offices like Graduate Studies and Student Life. Do you have experience with a position like this as an intermediary? Sort of, yes, here at Clemson. As the instruction coordinator, I sort of fill that role in that I often go to the graduate student orientations. I was a graduate school fellow, faculty fellow. The grad school offered an opportunity to go over and work with that office. And we proposed a project, a colleague and I did, and worked very closely with the grad school for about a year. And so we try to work with the graduate school through our instruction program has primarily been our aim. Now, if we had unlimited staff and resources, we would love an outreach librarian, because sometimes I really think it does provide an opportunity to open some of those doors and then bring your subject liaisons in to make those connections. I think that's a really crucial role.
Yes, thank you, Anne. And there is a question related to being a generalist, for someone who is a generalist and is working with grad students as their functional role, but not a subject specialist. Do you have any thoughts, other thoughts about how to connect effectively with faculty and grad students? I think it would be great if Anne can elaborate on this in some aspects of this. I think creating, for example, an online module, like at the Canvas course that I created on conducting a literature review, that can reach out a greater audience, a greater number of participants. It's something that you could easily approach the professor. Let's say you send an email in the fall saying, "Hi, I'm here if you need, my research support services. By the way, there is this module that you can link to your Canvas course on how to conduct a literature review." It's general enough for the STEM fields to understand, and it's really useful because in almost every class they're going to have to go through some sort of lit review exercise. That's one way. Another way, and I'll let Anne elaborate more on this, is to join forces with entities like the Academic Resource Center or the graduate school, who already have some well-established initiatives to reach out to graduate students and be part of their programming. And would you like to add to this?
We have worked with our Graduate 360 program, which is something that one of our associate deans in the graduate school began maybe last year. And she wanted to provide a centralized place for graduate students to find professional development. And we have worked with them to provide workshops. And we've also worked with our Office of Teaching, Innovation, and Effectiveness, or Effectiveness and Innovation, which also works extensively with graduate students and faculty as well. So we do try to offer drop-in workshops and or programming to assist graduate students and to help them know about the kinds of things that are offered for them. And the library also on campus provided a graduate student boot camp where we pulled together resources from across campus for graduate students to include research resources from the library, but also the Career Center and the graduate school and some other entities on campus, the Writing Center, to let graduate students know what was available for them. And those were so popular with graduate students.
If I may add that having the presence of library liaisons with unique set of expertise, such as the librarian who deals with the citation management software, digital scholarship, market research, academic integrity. You can co-teach sessions with them and be able to approach different audiences and in a more abstract way. No? Also, let's see, I have here, just have on my notes, it depends on the discipline too. Obviously, delving into a specific discipline is going to take time, and you might not be able to do this for different areas at the same time, but there are lower levels of library engagement that you could do in certain scientific disciplines. For example, there are subject areas at Clemson such as physics, astronomy, genetics, math, that have lower levels of engagement, and this can I can support these disciplines by simple email or asking if they would like to order specific books to be included in the collection. So I focus more on curating their specialized collections and just, with time develop that trust that they need in order to approach us. Other areas such as chemistry, bioengineering, and computer science, they're more open to engage with the librarians. So this is more like a medium level type of engagement. So this is when I know, okay, I'm going to offer a one-shot session and see if they accept. So it's a different method of approaching them. So it depends on how much they rely or they tend to rely on your services. So if they're low engagement people, then you just communicate by email and just reminding them, you can order books or let us know if you want to test drive this database. But then if you want to delve into one specific discipline, that's when I think you could devote the time to really sit down in the classroom. If you do the one-shot session and students are doing a lit review, ask if you could, offer consultation service to, continue doing the lit review in your office. Follow up with them. I have not been able to, contact every student, but the 6 or 7 students that I have been able to follow up, that has made such a big difference. So you nurture those few relationships, but they're high-quality relationships. Those students will go out and be your ambassadors. I have students come in, to me after being referred by another student. So focus on a few and work with them throughout that process, so that leaves you some time to develop your knowledge on that subject area and learn along with the student. I don't know if that answers your question, but the level of engagement will vary depending on how active or the history that that discipline has had with the libraries. Another way of, I wanted to add if I can, way of maintaining relationships with external folks would be those who are really interested in improving diversity and inclusion on campus. And so I try to attend events related to the campus climate. That is a chance to network with students, especially staff, the staff members who are essential in having access to these communities. Mentorship programs. We have the Peer and Wise mentorship programs. Those are also well established, and it would allow us to access students in the STEM fields who we would like to retain or keep attracted to the STEM fields. Let's see. Well, with the time being, can we cover?
Yeah, Dashieli, if you would go to slide 12, if you're willing, I thought we might take a bit more time and talk about the performance and self-efficacy study.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Do you want to talk, or do you want me to talk?
You can talk. Well, from your perspective in your discipline,
Sure. So this was actually one of the early conversations that Nashieli and I had, not in the first semester, but when she was actually taking, auditing the research methods course that I was taking. And so we were sitting around talking about some big ideas and what I'd seen with students. And one of the things that we wrestle with in engineering and science education, but also in each of the disciplines, is that typically students will come into graduate school already thinking that they know how to carry out a lit review, how to find the right articles, how to organize it. And so they come in with very high self-efficacy. Their perception of what they can do far outstrips what they actually can do in a way that would be accepted according to disciplinary norms. And so what typically happens is that they then crash. They realize how little they know. And so we see their self-efficacy plummet at the same time that their actual skill is increasing. So you can see that on this graph. The self-efficacy is this coral U shape, and the performance is this climbing teal shape. And so the spots that are circled are the places where there's match. And we were interested in seeing if this pattern that we hypothesized actually holds. And at the moment, we're, as Nashieli mentioned, we're still looking at the qualitative data. We have a small number of students, and so we don't have a large enough scale to be able to say, oh, these results hold in general. But we are looking to see where they started in terms of what they thought they were capable of, and what they could actually do, and then looking to see if that does actually follow this pattern that we've hypothesized. The two circled spots, one of them is this low self-efficacy, low performance, where they don't know how to do these tasks and they know it, but then over time they do gain the competence to carry out these information fluency tasks, and they also are aware that they can do it. And that's where we want them to wind up. We want them to finish up graduate school able to do this and confident that they're able to do it, and having their self-efficacy and their performance match. So that's what's underlying this study that we're undertaking, the three of us together. And we're happy to answer questions on that as well as on the other things we've talked about today.
I wanted to ask you a question about, not a question, I wanted to comment about our visits to this classroom and the importance of having these measurements captured right before and right after my intervention as a librarian. What would be the effect if we only had, for example, 2 visits instead of 4? Would we have trouble directing or finding a direct relation between what we do and the impact that that's having on students? So would that be the main reason for trying to capture the data right before and right after the library visit?
Yeah, I think from a research point of view, absolutely. Being able to capture that multiple data sources also so that we can see trends over time rather than just a start and end is important. If we only were measuring at the beginning and at the very end, we would just see those top 2 dots of that U-shaped coral curve, and we wouldn't necessarily be able to capture that plummet in self-efficacy followed by the gradual climb again. Similarly, if we were only capturing a couple of performance points, we might not be able to see the impact of the librarian interventions on the performance of the students.
We're also taking in consideration different theories and frameworks. One would be, of course, the ACRL framework and how we can approach our, entering the communities through these frames. But also we're looking into the conscious competence learning model by Birch, in which it goes into 4 stages of unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence. And then the 4th one would be unconscious competence. Now, so we want to find out if there's a natural progression of this level of self-efficacy throughout the course. And one of the instruments that we used for this particular research was the pre and a post based on the instrument Information Literacy Self-Efficacy Survey. It's already been tested for validity and reliability. So this is one of the things that we're learning along with ELISA, is that our instruments have to be tested for validity and reliability. And this is why it's important for us to collaborate with people like Eliza, because she can guide us through these methods that can improve our own librarianship.
And I would just like to toss out, if any of you who are in attendance today are interested in collaborating on that project, please reach out to any of the three of us, and we'll see if there's a way to look at some cross-institutional collaboration or cross-disciplinary collaboration. It's the more data, the better in my field.
I do encourage our counterparts to be able to collaborate with us, because it's going to make our research more replicable. So if we can apply this methodology to other disciplines and other students populations, the stronger the study will become. And it's about entering other communities and sharing what we're finding with other communities, just like we're doing right now. And do you want to talk a little bit about assessment in terms of observations, self-reflections? How has that helped us in understanding our approach to what we're doing, and if we're meeting with our goals?
We have been piloting some peer evaluation based on some work done at Ohio State Library. And we have got a form and a rubric that we have designed to facilitate the peer observation. And we're finding that that gives a lot of exposure for other librarians to teaching practices of their peers, because sometimes teaching can be very private. And so by opening up the peer evaluation process, we invite guests in to give us feedback and ideas and thoughts about the way that we're teaching, or the way that we're introducing concepts, and the way that students are engaging with us, because sometimes that's something we miss when we're teaching, is how do students react to certain things, and what do they seem to respond to better than other things. And it's been very interesting as we have thought about new ways to engage with students and to help them to reflect in a way that mirrors the way that we're both watching each other teach, and as we do self-reflections. So if we think that something went particularly well, but then we look at the student self-reflection and it didn't go that well, it just gives us some more insight into our teaching practice in a way that is sort of trackable, and not so much just a gut feeling, well, I think that class went well, or I think that class went poorly. It just gives us some more feedback on what exactly went well or not.
I agree that we have to be open to receiving feedback, because sometimes we lose sight of how we're performing, but also celebrate the milestones. And I think self-reflection is such a good exercise for anyone to be able to articulate what has just happened, with the experience that you have with students, and to share that with the community of librarians. It's super important that we support each other. It takes a village to really accomplish what we've been asked, to serve and to support our students. And so I think it's a great way to also learn new ways to approach it. I've observed about 4 other librarians teach, and I always gain something new. So you know what? I like how she approaches the databases. Oh, I've never flipped a classroom. That's risky. And that's the whole point. You have to take risks. But always, you can be honest. You're not going to, I'm not a chemist, so I'm not going to go into particulars, but I can take the chemistry concepts and bring them to a more abstract level, so that we all can understand each other, and so that another discipline can come in and understand the chemists. So that's, that's what this frame is about. In order to construct this authority and to contextualize it, you have to bring it one level of verbal abstraction. So if one computer science is looking for, let's say the topic is about online gaming, and it's about teaching biology students how to use a certain gaming program, and there's a mentor component. Well, a computer scientist might call this mentor component an avatar, or virtual agent. But if I go into an education crowd to learn about the pedagogical aspects or to a database, I have to see how the other end expresses the same concepts. It could be a pedagogical agent. It could be a facilitator, monitor. So it all depends on the community you're working with. But you want to bring those expressions to a more abstract level and perhaps call it artificial intelligence. That way we can all understand the same language, no? While at the same time we're learning new ways of expressing something. So it does take practice, just like being a doctor, a lawyer. The more you do it, the better you become at it. And yes, it can cause some anxiety if this is not your subject area. But it's okay because you have already attained a set of tools that are really, really helpful for your students. And that's what you want to propose to the faculty. I can plan and strategize research. I can organize findings. I can synthesize my findings. I can share these findings with others. We have those abilities. It's just a matter of, knocking on the door and proposing the same set of skill sets for your students. I have quite a few things on the back burner, but I have about 6 or 7 burners right now. The front burner is ESED, but there are other burners that are also cooking. So it takes time to develop those relationships with the general STEM fields. So just focus on 1 or 2 disciplines that you feel comfortable with or you're interested in, and start from there.
Thank you so much, you guys. That was a really great presentation. Do we have any more questions from the participants?
I'd like to thank all of you for including me in your community. I am honored to be part of this group, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Eliza, for also allowing us to enter your community. Now we can form another sub-community.
All right.
And thank you, Anne, as well, for being my mentor.
All right, well, thank everybody for joining us today. The recording and transcript of this chat will be posted on the STS Information Literacy Committee LibGuide, which I will link in the chat. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Otherwise, thank you for coming, and I hope everyone has a good day. And thank you again, Anne and Eliza and Nasheli, for presenting.
Thank you for having us. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Be in touch.